Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to showcase a little build that I've been using in Dark and Darker on the Wizard with some success. This isn't necessarily groundbreaking, but if you're new to Wizard or just feel like seeing what people are up to, definitely this is the video for you. So Wizards can be seen as a little bit of a challenging class for a lot of new players, and they can be definitely challenging to deal with if you don't really know how they work. So this video might also help if you're looking how to take down Wizards as well. To start off, let's go over some of the perks that I'm using. So this build, I like to call it my Frost Mage build, mostly because we're using both Ice Shield and Ice Mastery. I'm also pairing it with the Black Nightmare Skeleton here so that I get an extra little bit of armor, which means that in my Squire gear, I'm actually at 20% physical damage reduction, which isn't huge, but it will let me survive a hit or two so that I can make space. Specifically using Ice Shield to get that extra slow that even though it only lasts half a second, that is enough time that if you are running directly away from an opponent and they hit you, they will not be able to hit you with their follow-up attack, which lets you jump, turn, use your bunny hops, and get your ice bolts going, and then hopefully keep them at bay for the rest of the fight. So, a few things going on is really we're all focusing on speed in this build. So we have Quick Chant for spellcasting speed, we have Ice Shield and Ice Mastery for creating space, and then we have Spell Overload to give us the gas we need to get over the finish line. This is what's going to give us the ability to finish off our opponents, especially people like Barbarians that are going to have a lot of magic resist and a lot of health. You need to have a lot of spells to actually get through their defenses. And you'll find that most effective wizard builds are either going to be 10 spells, so running 2 spell memories, or they're going to be running overload. And then in really high gear scores, you're actually going to run overload with 2 spell memories. But in lower gear, I find using meditate with 1 spell memory and then spell overload gives you plenty of gas, plenty of spells to play around with. So let's talk about the spells. This is sort of a default loadout that I would use. Most of these I feel are pretty mandatory, but there is one exception, which is the slow. I think this is a nice flex spot. I've seen things like Light Orb, Ignite, Magic Locker Find. If you get a little bit more gear, Haste or Invisibility are great. And honestly, some of these more expensive spells, if you get quite a bit of additional spell capacity, can be brought in as well. Every single spell on the wizard has its use, and it's going to depend on your preference. But personally, for me, I find that Magic Missile is almost mandatory as a PvE tool. I'm not taking the perk that is Arcane Mastery, so I don't have that extra 0.5 second reduction on my spells, my arcane spells. So this isn't as effective as like a shotgun tool. In a pinch, it can be used. Mid-range, if you just want to kind of hold a hallway and stop a push, it can be totally effective at that, but you're not going to have really, really quick magic missiles for PvP. So this is primarily a PvE tool, but it's very effective at clearing out monsters, and therefore something I'm happy to use. Fireball is both amazing damage, it has AoE, it has a little bit of a dot. You can use it to kill druids that are shifting into rats and things like that. It's also fantastic at breaking down doors and blowing up boxes and treasure chests and things to quickly get access to loot. Not that I would recommend using it for looting very often, but it can do that if you need to. But definitely blowing down doors to get a quick escape or to chase, and it does a ton of damage. It is a projectile, so it can be blocked, it can be parried, it can be hit by other things in the air. So that should be noted as well. But this will do a ton of damage because the direct and splash damage will go off. And if you hit somebody in the head with a fireball, it will do a huge amount of damage. It should be noted that you can also just like point blank range stuff somebody in the face with this, and it's really, really hard to dodge. The hitbox is huge, and the splash damage, while it hurts a little bit, a lot of times against like a plate wearing fighter that has low magic resist, it's more than worth it to do that. Zap is a nice quick spell. It does have technically a 1 second burn, but most people will have enough magic or debuff resist that the burn won't necessarily be consistent. There's only a few classes that have the debuff duration. that's not going to diminish that effect. So don't really count on it as a dot unless you're running Fire Mastery, which this build doesn't do. So I primarily just use this as that quick hit scan, especially if somebody's holding up a shield or like they're running away around the corner, just as a small amount of damage. My primary damage source in this build is going to be Ice Bolt, and it has a nice large projectile, makes it really easy to hit. It slows your target, and most importantly, with this build, it actually roots them for a second. And against melee, if you time it with their swings properly, you can make it so that they will never get to you. You just gotta land your Ice Bolts. So you almost use this in melee range. You can use some like mid-range Ice Bolts. Obviously, it's a projectile, it goes really, really far, but you wanna make sure you're landing these. So I use this almost in melee range, because if you're bunny hopping and you're hitting them with their ice bolts here, they will just miss the swing, and that's the goal. You want them to be close enough where they think they're going to hit you, so they start the swing, and then as you're flying backwards, you're spinning around, freezing them in place so their swing just falls short, and then you're queuing up another ice bolt instantly. That's the goal with this build, is you want to keep them just at range and wear them down, and then as they start fleeing, you finish them off with zaps or fireballs. Slow, this is sort of like the 5th utility slot. I use slow sometimes. It can be a great debuff if you land this first. It's a hit scan, lasts for a few seconds. It can make landing that first ice bolt a lot easier, and then you get your chain going. Ignite I've used before. It's fine in PvE. You can use it on your allies as well, give them a little bit more damage. It doesn't give them a huge damage boost, but giving it to your team can be a nice little bonus for them. You're not going to be doing too many melees with this particular build. And Magic Lock can be interesting, locking doors, especially in Inferno when the doors can't be broken down. Obviously, Haste and Invis are great utility as well. And if you're facing against a lot of rogues, just being able to spam light orbs, especially with Meditate, you can just light up every single room. It can be really nice to have as well. So those are the spells. There's a few options you can play around with. Because I like using the Rondel Dagger, Ignite can be kind of fun with that. And you'll notice that I'm not using Crystal Ball. I just have a Grey Lantern on just because it gives me a little bit of light. And you'll also notice that I have all my spells with Overload, and I'm in Squire gear. I'm at 22 gear score. So the one exception is I did buy a set of green rawhides. You can buy these really easily. You could even just get like a +1 knowledge pendant. I do recommend grabbing Phoenix Chokers in low gear score as well. You can put a blue Phoenix Choker on and take off some gear if you really don't need that 5th slot, which oftentimes in solos I might do, because you can find a piece of plus knowledge gear relatively easily, and you're not necessarily using this 5th slot, because between fireballs and ice bolts and zaps, that's where your PvP spells pretty well covered. And you'll be able to survive quite a few engagements with Overload just relying on those 3 spells with this particular build. So hopefully, if you're struggling with your build, and I know it took me a while to try Ice Mastery. I wasn't convinced it was going to be that useful, but after playing with it quite a bit now, I'm in love. Ice Mastery is super, super fun. So if you haven't yet tried an Ice Mastery Overload build, 8 ice bolts that do slow your target for that half second is hilariously oppressive, especially against classes like barbarians that only really have melee options, and you can kite them till the cows come home, it feels like. Just you have to be careful around their cooldowns and don't get hit by an Achilles strike Francisca. But that being said, it's a super fun build, super viable. It works in all stages of the game, whether you're at pretty much Squire gear all the way up to high roller lobbies. This will serve you well, and you'll be able to contribute to the fight. So if you're struggling with the wizard build, hopefully this makes sense. And yeah, thanks for watching.